Today, I'm going to talk about a currency that I find interesting, the North Korean won. I think myself and a lot of people find this currency interesting because, well, North Korea is still a very insular country, and it has some interesting design choices. And I think that is part of the interest, and also it's got an interesting history. So going back in time, in the from 1880 to 1910, Korea went from basically being a client state of China to being an independent country to being in Japan's sphere of influence to being annexed by Japan through a series of sometimes kind of violent events. So then Korea during this time was united, and it had one currency. And, Japan, the Empire of Japan, issued currency there just like they did in many of their colonies and puppet nations. So, as we all know, Japan was on the losing side of World War II. So the Korean peninsula got split. The Soviets administrated everything above the 45th parallel, and the Allies below. So at this time, from the end of the war till December of 1947, there was a unified won for both Koreas. However, once Soviet administration ended, on December 6th, the North Korean Central Bank issued the North Korean won. They basically spent the 6th and the 7th exchanging old currency or confiscating old currency to put out the new currency. At first, it was a managed float until 1948. In 1958, they joined the Soviet currency bloc. And that meant that the North Korean won was pegged to the Soviet ruble 1-to-1. They had the same value. If you exchanged them, you could get the same value. However, in February of 1959, the North Koreans basically came out with a new currency, the second won. One of the problems that was going on already in North Korea, and this is going to be a recurring theme, is that they had a lot of inflation. The economy was damaged by the Korean War. There was lots of inflation. So basically, from the 13th to the 17th of 1959, they switched to the second won. So to get one new won, you had to trade in 100 old won. And so now the hard peg was 0.3 second won to 1 USSR ruble. However, on January 1st, 1961, the Soviets, they came out with the new Soviet ruble, which was traded 10-to-1. You had to trade in 10 of your old won to get 10 of the old rubles to get 1 of the new rubles. So now there was a new hard peg, 1.33 Korean won equaled 1 new Soviet ruble. So 1.21 was about equal to 1 US dollar. And this system stayed in place until October of 1947. In October of 1947, they ended up switching to what you'd call a managed float. It floated against different currencies. Now, they managed it, meaning that they would move it up and down, but it was still very much in the government's control. Then, in 1979, in April, the older designs had to be exchanged for a new design. Most of the North Korean bills I have is from these 1979 design. So, just to give you an idea, um, in 1990, they went back to a hard peg. So 0.971 equals $1. Previously, it had been 2.151 was $1 in 1988. So in 1992, they came out with another currency. They redesigned again. I think a big issue here is counterfeiting. So they were having issues with counterfeiting. And so they changed it 1-to-1 with the new rate. You could trade up to 399. You could up to 399 in cash. Larger amounts up to 30,000 won in a bank account. You could trade it by putting it in a bank account. If you had more than that, yeah, tough luck. By this point, too, they were starting to give up on foreign exchange certificates. So a lot of countries with closed economies, where they have a lot of control over the certificate, they don't want the currency to be converted to other currencies. So after the Soviet Union monetary bloc, after they left that, they started creating currency for visitors. There was one set for visitors from capitalist countries and one set for visitors from socialist countries. They kind of had given up on that and quickly moved to a system where they wanted visitors to be using hard currency that they lacked. The euro, the US dollar, the Japanese yen. And then in 2009, the inflation had gotten so bad that they had to issue a third yen. So just to give you an example, some stats I could find. August 2002, the unofficial exchange rate was 151 for $1. August 2003, 900 won for $1. However, in 2009, they switched and they devalued the currency by coming up with the third won. So you needed 100 of the second won to get one of the new won. And they set exchange limits. So you could only exchange so much money. This ended up causing a panic, and this ended up wiping out a lot of stored wealth. They kept raising it, but from what I could find, the final exchange limit was 500,000. So then they set the official rate now that 900 won is equal to $1. However, as is very common in countries like this, the black market rate is much different. So the banks might have an official rate. You can exchange at this, but if you go into the market, go on the black market, talk to the shopkeeper, like, hey, I got an exchange, the rate's much higher. This is actually pretty common among closed currencies, like tightly controlled currencies, like the North Korean won.